That black, crumbly stuff down in your dog's ear, the stuff that looks like dirt or dried coffee grounds or a little dried blood, is alive. It is not wax, and it is not filth from a dog who needs a bath. It is a living colony, thousands of them crawling on the surface of his ear canal, feeding on him around the clock, and that is why he cannot stop digging at the side of his head. And there is a bottle of oil sitting on a grocery shelf right now, a couple of dollars, that smothers the whole colony dead. The clinic will run you close to 200 for the same result. The bug is the same, so is the ending. One of those two options also bills you for the swab, and I am going to show you who owns the lab that swab gets mailed to, because once you see that part, the $200 stops looking like medicine and starts looking like a toll. Stay with me even if your dog is 13 years old, even if he has had ear trouble his whole life, even if you have already spent real money on this and watched it come roaring back a month later, especially if it returned, because the reason it came back is not that the cheap fix does not work. It is one specific detail nobody bothered to tell you. There is an old shepherd named Duke who paid for that missing detail over 2 years and something north of $600, and his number is going to land a lot harder once you have the piece he never got. Let me back up to why I am even talking about this. After the last video, a lot of you said the same thing in the comments. Some version of, my dog keeps shaking his head, keeps scratching one ear raw, and there is this dark, gritty gunk down in there, and the vet keeps handing me drops that work for a week, and then it is back. What is actually going on, and is there something I can do at home? That question came in enough times that I want to answer it properly, because the answer is one of the clearest examples I know of a cheap, old, dead simple fix getting buried under a bill. So here is the first thing, and it is the thing most owners get wrong before they even start, because it decides whether anything you do next will work at all. You have to know what you are actually looking at. Real ear mites, the parasite the doctors call otodectus, leave a very particular sign. Dry, dark, crumbly debris, almost exactly like coffee grounds, usually in both ears, and a dog who is not just scratching but violently shaking his head and digging like something is crawling in there because something is. That is the picture. Now here is the part that matters, and that a rushed appointment will skip right over. In a grown dog, most of the time it is not mites at all. They are mostly a young dog, a shelter dog, and a lives with cats problem. In an adult dog, that dark gunk and that smell are far more often a yeast or a bacterial infection, and yeast has a different tell. It is wetter, it is waxier, and it has that sweet, heavy, overripe smell coming off the ear. Why does that distinction matter to you and your wallet? Because the fix is different, and because a clinic that hands you a mite treatment for a yeast ear or a yeast treatment for mites has just sold you a thing that was never going to hold, and it comes back and you come back, a 5-minute look under a cheap magnifier tells the difference. Whether you always get that 5-minute look when the same trip could bill you for a great deal more is a fair question to sit with. Let me put the real numbers on the table, because this is where it stops being abstract. I went and pulled what a standard ear visit actually runs, the itemized kind people post after the fact, cringing. One owner's slip, $65 for the exam, another $65 to put the ear swab under a microscope, $30 for a steroid shot, $37 for the medication. That is $197. Another one, a puppy, $56 for the exam, $40 for the cytology, $49 for the ear medication. And these are the routine ones, the ones that went smoothly. None of that counts the recheck they ask you to come back for, which is another visit fee to look in the same ear again. Now hold that $65 line, the one for reading the swab. Follow where that sample goes, because this is the part one promised you. When you drop your dog at a lot of these clinics, the sample does not stay in the building. It gets sent out to a diagnostic lab. And a huge share of those labs in this country, the biggest network of them, is a company called Antech. Antech is owned by a company called VCA, a chain of nearly 800 animal hospitals. And in 2017, VCA, the whole chain and the lab together, was bought by Mars, the multinational whose name is on half the candy in your grocery checkout, in a deal worth around $9 billion. Mars had already picked up Banfield, the clinic inside the pet store, back in 2007, and Blue Pearl, the emergency chain, in 2015. Put it together, and one company, a company that mostly makes chocolate bars and pet food, quietly became the largest owner of veterinary hospitals in the country, and it owns one of the big labs your dog's swab gets mailed off to. I want to be careful and fair here because I do not need to dress this up. I am not telling you every vet is in on something or that a corporate memo said to overcharge you for earbuds. Most vets I've known got into it because they love animals and they are drowning in student debt. What I am telling you is plainer and honestly worse in its own quiet way. The exam, the lab that reads the swab, the drops on the shelf, and in a lot of cases, the building itself can all roll up to the same owner. When the diagnosis and the test and the treatment and the landlord are the same company, nobody in that chain has a single reason to ever mention that the fix for the actual bug has been $2 of oil for about 100 years. It just never comes up. Silence is cheaper than a lie and does the same job, and that silence is exactly what cost Duke's owner $600 because every round of drops he bought stopped working for the same reason, a reason nobody in that chain was ever going to say out loud. Keep him in the back of your mind. I am about to hand you the piece he was missing. So where does the $2 of oil come from? Let me take you to where I first saw it because I did not read this in a book. Years back when I was younger and living out on the Mongolian steppe, learning the dogs from the people who have kept working dogs alive and sound for centuries without a single thing we sell each other, I spent a stretch of a hard winter in a herding camp out in Arkhangai. The cold out there is a different animal, the kind that gets into the felt walls and sits there. There was an older herder in that camp named Adgan Bayar. Adgan, weathered like the land, quiet the way men out there are quiet. He had a whole string of dogs that guarded the herd, and one of the young ones, a black dog he called Car, was doing exactly what your dog is doing right now. Shaking his head against the frozen ground, pawing at his ear, whining low. I remember watching Adgan because I expected nothing. There was no vet for hundreds of miles. There was no bottle of drops, no bag, no plastic dropper with a brand on it. He warmed a little oil in his hands by the dung fire, turning the tin slowly until it was just warm, not hot. He tilted the dog's head, dribbled it down into the ear, folded the ear over, and worked the base of it with his thumb until you could hear it, a wet, squishing sound under the wind. The dog went from fighting to leaning into it. Udgan did it like a man who had done it 10,000 times because he had and his father before that. He looked at me, nodded at the dog, and said the only thing he ever said about it, which was, "The little ones cannot breathe under it." Simple. Then he handed the dog back to the herd and went to the fire. That is it. That is the whole mechanism, and it is worth understanding because it is why the cheap thing genuinely works and is not folklore. An ear mite is not some armored thing. It sits on the surface and it breathes through its own skin. Coat that surface in oil and it cannot take in air. It smothers. It is the same reason a bug drowns in a puddle of oil left on the counter. You are not poisoning the mite with some clever compound cooked up in a lab. You are filling the little world it lives in with the one thing it cannot survive in. A prescription does not do it better. It just does it with a copay attached. And this was never some secret of the East either. Oil in a dog's ear for mites was ordinary grandfather-level knowledge on farms all over the world, including right here. Country vets a century ago wrote it down as the standard handling for a crusted, head-shaking ear, and every stockman and half the households knew it without being told twice. It was not fringe medicine, it was Tuesday. That is what makes losing it sting when you realize it slipped out of common use in about one generation, right around the time somebody worked out how to put it in a bottle and price it like a discovery. Okay, let me give you the actual method, start to finish, the way you would really do it, because the fantasy of $2 is nice, but I want you to be able to walk into your own kitchen tonight and do this. The oil itself is nothing exotic, a plain mild oil. Olive oil works. So does mineral oil, and that is what the old-timers reached for most often. Even fractionated coconut oil is fine. You want it clean and unscented, no additives, no essential oils dumped in for good measure, just the oil. A small bottle is a couple of dollars and you will use a fraction of it. Warm it gently first, the way Utgan did, to about body temperature by standing the container in a cup of hot water for a minute or two. Never hot. Warm oil spreads and soothes. Cold oil in the ear makes a dog fight you, and I do not blame him. First, clean out what you can see. Take a cotton ball, not a cotton swab, jam down deep, and gently wipe the loose debris you can reach in the outer part of the ear, the folds, and the opening. You are clearing the driveway, not going spelunking. Never push a swab down into the canal. You pack the gunk in tighter and you can hurt him. Then the treatment itself. Tilt his head so the bad ear points up. Dribble in a good 5 to 10 drops, enough to genuinely fill and coat the canal. More for a big dog, less for a little one. Fold the ear flap down over the opening and massage the base of the ear down low where it meets the skull for a solid 20 or 30 seconds until you hear that squishing sound Utgan listened for. That is the whole point. It means the oil has traveled all the way down and coated everything living down there. Then step back and let him shake his head, because he will, and that shaking flings the loosened debris up and out where you can wipe it away with the cotton ball. You do this once, maybe twice a day. Here is the line that belongs to men like Utgan, who knew it long before there was a clinic to send anyone to, and it comes before anything else you do. Oil is for an itchy, crusted, mite-ridden ear. It is not for a wrecked one. If that ear is hot and badly swollen, if it is bleeding or raw, if it throws off a truly foul, rotten smell, or if the dog cries out and will not let you touch it, then oil is the wrong tool and it can do real harm. That can be a ruptured eardrum or an infection gone deep, and it is past what any home fix reaches. Utgan could tell a sore ear from a ruined one across the length of a camp, without a word of Latin in him, and you can learn to tell too. Almost always it is the simple one, but look before you pour. Now here is the detail that changes everything, the one that separates the people who fix this for good from the people who swear the home remedy is junk. It is the exact reason yours came back after the vet's drops, and it is the piece Duke never got. So write this on your hand if you have to. The oil kills the living mites. It does not kill the eggs. They are down in that ear, sealed up, waiting. The oil cannot smother an egg the way it smothers a breathing adult. And those eggs hatch out on their own clock over about 3 weeks, a fresh generation crawling out to start the whole thing over from scratch. So here is what happens to almost everybody, and I would bet money it happened to you. You treat for a few days, the scratching stops, the dog looks wonderful, you decide you have won and you quit. And you did win against that first generation. But a couple of weeks later, the eggs hatch and it all comes back, and now you are certain the oil failed. It never did. You just stopped before the eggs were done hatching. So you do not stop when the symptoms stop. You keep going for a full 3 weeks at the minimum, treating right through the calm stretch when it looks completely cured, so that every egg that hatches crawls out into an ear that is still coated and still deadly to it. 3 weeks. That is the whole secret the drops never taught you, because a bottle that says clears mites fast sells a lot better than one that says keep this up for a month long after he stops scratching. Respect the 3 weeks, and $2 of oil beats the $200 visit clean. If you have got an old dog right now, right there at your feet, gray in the muzzle, who has been shaking his head and digging at that ear for weeks, and some part of you has quietly decided it is just what old dogs do, or that it is too late to bother, I want to talk to you for a second. It is not too late, and it is not just what old dogs do. It is a bug or it is a yeast, both of them fixable, and either way that dog is uncomfortable in a way you can begin to end tonight for the price of a coffee. You do not need to wait for an appointment or sit in a waiting room or schedule a single thing. You need a cotton ball, a $2 bottle, and 3 weeks of not quitting early, which brings me back to Duke and to the number I promised you. Duke was an old shepherd belonging to a buddy of mine a couple of streets over from where I used to live. Big dog, going gray, one of those steady old dogs that kids climb on and he just sighs and lets them. And for 2 solid years, Duke had what his owner kept getting told was chronic ear trouble. That was the phrase, chronic, like it was weather, like it was just Duke's lot. And he did everything right, the way we are all trained to. He went in, he paid, drops, better for a week or two. Then the head shaking again, the smell, the dark gunk. Back in for another visit, another swab, another round of the same. He added it up for me once, a little sheepish about it, and across those 2 years it came to something north of $600 on that one dog's ears, and Duke was still standing in the kitchen shaking his head like a wet dog. Here is what nobody in 2 years and $600 had ever done. Nobody had kept a treatment going the full 3 weeks. Every single round stopped the moment Duke looked better, which, and you know this now, is the exact moment the next batch of eggs was getting ready to hatch. The problem was never that the treatments could not work. The problem was a calendar working against a dog whose owner was told every time to stop as soon as the coast looked clear. So my friend, half out of trust and half out of being flat sick of the whole circus, tried it the old way. He confirmed it was actually mites first, the dry coffee ground kind, not the wet yeasty kind. Warmed the oil in a cup of hot water, cotton ball first, filled the ear, massaged the base until it squished, let the old dog shake it out across the kitchen, twice a day, and here is the number that matters. He did not stop at day 4 when Duke stopped scratching. He went the full 21 days straight through the long, quiet stretch where every instinct told him it was already over. 3 weeks, $2 of oil. Duke's ears cleared, and this time they stayed cleared. The next winter came and went with no chronic anything, no drops, no swab, no recheck. 2 years and better than $600 of a problem that turned out, in the end, to be 3 weeks and a bottle of oil that a herder in Arkansas would have found too obvious to even explain. That is the whole story of Duke, and it is the whole story of this bug. None of this was ever really about oil. That old dog's ears were kept clear in the end by the exact thing every farm and every herding camp on earth used before there was a shelf to sell you off of. You were never a careless owner who let his dog go filthy. Ear mites do not care how clean your house is or how much you love that dog. And the real fix was never some rare, complicated thing locked behind a clinic door. It has been sitting in your kitchen the entire time. What happened is simpler and colder than any of that. A living thing that drowns in oil got turned into a $200 workup, a swab mailed across the state, and a lab bill that more often than most people ever realize gets paid right back up the chain to the same company that owns the building you are standing in. That is not your failure. That is a toll booth built on top of a farm remedy, and the old dog asleep at your feet right now can be out from under it by the end of the month. Before I go, I would honestly like to know, what is the most you have ever paid at the vet for one dog's ears? Drop it in the comments, the itemized damage if you kept the slip, because I have a feeling a lot of people are about to feel a good deal less alone reading that thread. And if you would rather learn the next one of these here than at that counter, subscribe. What I do on this channel is hand back the cheap, ordinary things that got quietly turned into bills, and there is a long list of them still waiting. Duke waited 2 years and $600 for his. Your old dog does not have to wait at all.